Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your power behind the voice on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I've tagged the video Ball and Socket Joint Oversights. My friends, as far as ball and socket joint, is concerned, every student almost always will be able to tell you something by way of giving you some examples of these ball and socket, joints we're talking about. Yes, precisely. One will talk about the shoulder joint. We'll also talk about, of course, the hip joint. Yes, later on, as you go through them, you see the real anatomical names to these guys. And then also, we want to also appreciate some other two types, of this kind of ball and socket joint, which often is overlooked by, of course, anatomy educators and then students. Yes, also forget to, of course, read them and then, of course, know them. Now, one thing we know about the ball and socket joint is that as far as the three main kinds of joints, is concerned, we understand that the ball and socket joint is under the category of what we call the synovial joint. It therefore tells us that it will be diarthrodial. Yes, it will be freely, movable. One thing too that we know about the ball and socket joint is that, it allows, several degrees of movement in different planes. Yes, talk about flexion, extension, talk about adduction, abduction, talk about medial rotation, lateral rotation, among others. And that is why ball and socket joints are often described as being, of course, multi-axial or tri-axial or poly-axial, so to speak. My friends, at the end of this meeting, I want you to know the other categories of ball and socket joint. And so in this rapid section, I take you through the oversights of what we call the ball and socket joint. My friends, schematically, you can see what we have over here. For it to qualify to be a ball and socket joint, then of course there should be one articulating bone present with, of course, this kind of cup-shaped cavity over here. So that becomes your socket, and then of course there should be another articulating bone which should have a rounded or protruding, projection which can fit in this kind of socket over here, and that becomes, of course, your ball. Remember that I've already stated that ball and socket joints, they will allow, varying degrees of movement in several planes. And so we describe them as being triaxial, or even multi-axial or polyaxial, so to speak. And so that's what we mean by it. Now, in one plane, we can reduce the angle at a joint, and that's something which will constitute flexion. And in that same plane, we can also increase the angle at that joint. That becomes, of course, extension. So we talk about flexion, extension. That is one of the planes, in which this movement can occur. Yes, not only that, we can also cause that kind of movement, with respect to the midline of the body. Now, if it's going closer to the midline of the body, my friends, we are talking about adduction, adduction. These things are basic concepts, and therefore I'm not really going into that detail. And of course, if you are taking it further away from the midline of the body, then it becomes abduction. So what it means is that with respect to the same plane, adduction and of course abduction can occur. So that becomes the second plane of interest. My friends, we are not done. Even sometimes, because we know there's a ball and socket joint, then there could be some kind of steering movement, so to speak, which will be taking place at this joint. Some rotatory movement can take place over there. And so what will happen is that if we take this, movement, if the rotatory movement is happening, such that it is taking that kind of whatever part of the body, towards the midline of the body, then of course it becomes internal rotation, something we can also call medial rotation. My friends, the opposite, taking it away, further away from the midline of the body, goes to what we call external rotation, something we can also call lateral rotation. So generally speaking, this is how, the biomechanics as far as general picture of ball and socket joint, is concerned. And so my friends, then what is the point? Why am I doing this video? The reason why I'm doing this video is that we should be able to tell, areas in the human body where we see this kind of ball and socket joint. And so, I mean, commonly, the one we know of is this guy over here. I mean, the frequently dislocated joint that we have in the human body by way of the shoulder joint. Precisely, I'm talking about the glenohumeral joint. Yes, the name is simple because, of course, we talk about the glenoid cavity, okay, which will be over here. Okay, and then of course we have the head of the humerus, so humeral, okay, coming from the head of the humerus, and of course the glenoid, okay, cavity coming from, of course, this scapula over here. Okay, so this joint becomes the glenohumeral joint, one of the ball and socket joint. Yes, it makes sense because this is the socket over here provided by, of course, the glenoid cavity. And my friends, remember that I said that it is the frequently dislocated joint that we have in the human body. Yes, oftentimes going to be an inferior dislocation of this joint. I've explained several videos regarding this one. Okay, now one thing that we understand is that even God saw it coming, that in future this joint will be frequently dislocated, and that is why he puts in something over here to serve as a rim, okay, covering this cavity over here, a rim around this cavity, so that it can deepen the articular surface over here by way of the socket. And so we have something called glenoidal labrum, okay, or the glenoid labrum, okay, which is of course fibrocartilaginous. I mean, something which is basic that everyone knows. Okay, so that is what we find over here. So that, of course, this head, okay, can fit in here, you know, a bit more better, okay, compared to if we don't have this kind of, I mean, glenoidal labrum. Okay, so this is an example of a ball and socket joint. This is the ball from the head of the humerus, okay, and this is the socket from the, of course, the glenoid cavity, which is further deepened by the glenoidal labrum. Okay, so please understand that. Yes, I mean, I don't need to go into a lot of details about this, I mean, shoulder joint. Okay, one thing we know about it is that, yes, you can see, okay, we have this lesser tubercle, we have the greater tubercle over here, and of course the groove in between them, of course, being the intertubercular sulcus or the bicipital groove, where we see the head. I mean, we talk about the head as far as the long head of what we call the biceps brachii muscle. Yes, it tendon, it will run over here together with the synovial sheath. And one more thing which will also run in over here, which I've mentioned already, is the ascending branch of anterior circumflex humeral artery, okay, which of course will have to be bridged by a ligament which we call the transverse humeral ligament. My friends, the key point I want to make out over here is that this glenohumeral joint, which the layperson will call the shoulder joint, is an example of a ball and socket joint, which something which, I mean, no doubt everyone knows about it. My friends, another joint which is also, yes, very common, yes, permitting all those movements to be explained already, is, my friends, something that we call acetabulofemoral joint. And what, my friends, why are we calling it acetabulofemoral joint? For the reason that, yes, there will be another depression over here on this bone, okay, one of the girdles, okay, of the hip, okay, hip, I mean, region over here, yes, whether you call it ox causae, okay, so we have two of them. One of them does of interest that I'm talking about, okay, so we have a cavity created over here, which you call the acetabular cavity. So there's a cavity over here, which we call it acetabular cavity. Okay, so that one is serving as a socket. Okay, yes, again, just like the shoulder joint, it will have to be, deepened further with the help of a labrum, okay, which we are calling it acetabular, labrum. My friends, one thing that we know is that, yes, once there's a socket, then we need the head. My friends, the head is coming from this guy over here, which we call it the femur, the head of the femur. Okay, so which of course will bear a fovea. Okay, that, opening over there. Okay, so this is the head of what we call the femur. Okay, fitting in here by that socket provided by this acetabulum. Okay, so this one becomes a second, of course, the commonest. Yes, just like that of the shoulder joint. Yes, this one is called the hip joint. Okay, commonly called the hip joint. And so you can see that the shoulder joint is very common. The hip joint is also very common. We are calling them glenohumeral joint and of course acetabulofemoral joints respectively. Okay, these are common examples of what we call the ball and socket joint. So we appreciate these things. But my friends, why am I interested in this? Because my friends, the point I want you to become aware is that even with the respect to the foot, there is a ball and socket joint. My friends, I want you to know this. Even with respect to the foot, there is a ball and socket joint. And my friend, the name of this ball and socket joint, which we find it in the foot, okay, is something we call the talocalcaneonavicular joint. I want you to know the name. So we have three bones which are forming this joint. Talocalcaneonavicular joint. Okay, that is what we're talking about. And so, my friend, what is the point? The point you want to make out over here is that, yes, 3 bones are articulating over here. One of them is, of course, the talus. Now, the talus is the one who is going to bear the head. So you may have the neck, but I'm interested in the head of the talus. Okay, so the head of the talus is over here. Okay, so this becomes the ball. I want you to understand that. This becomes the ball. And then, of course, by way of the socket is provided by, of course, the 2 other bones. And what are these 2 other bones? In front, we have what we call anteriorly, we have the navicular bone, which will present, okay, with a depression, okay, at its posterior aspect. So that, of course, anteriorly, this talus can articulate with it, okay, can fit in there. My friends, not only that, even from below, we have the what you call a depression or a cup-shaped, nature coming from this bone, which you call it the heel bone, the calcaneus. Okay, so there will be another depression over here. And then, my friends, together, even from below again, there will be another ligament. And my friend, this ligament, we call it plantar calcaneo, navicular ligament. Plantar calcaneo navicular. So there will be another ligament from below over here. Okay, plantar calcaneo navicular ligament. Yes, completing that kind of, support. Now, remember something, that this plantar calcaneo navicular, yes, plantar for the reason that is coming from below, the plantar aspect, you're talking about the sole of the foot. Okay, so talking about this plantar calcaneo navicular ligament. And this ligament, because so towards the medial aspects, yes, is very important in stabilizing or in forming this kind of medial longitudinal arch of the foot. And my friends, that is why we also call it, the spring ligament. I want you to understand that the spring ligament is also called the plantar calcaneo navicular ligament. Yes, from below, just like the depression which will be created, or the cavity which will be created by, of course, the calcaneal bone. So that we get this cup-shaped cavity, okay, so that it can permit all these varying degrees of movement. Yes, precisely. Yes, some kind of movement which occurs at the subtalar joint. Yes, we talk about something we call inversion movement of the foot occurring in one plane. We talk about adduction, abduction. We talk about plantar flexion, of course, dorsiflexion. Remember something, that whenever we talk about plantar flexion, then we are talking about, of course, the real flexion. Okay, and then when we talk about the dorsiflexion, we are talking about extension of the foot at the foot. Okay, just like we talk about palmar flexion, that's a real flexion, and when we talk about dorsiflexion, as far as the upper limb occurring at the wrist joint is concerned, that becomes, of course, the extension. Okay, so please understand that all these movements taking place over there. I want you to understand that this talocalcaneo navicular ligament is also a ball and socket joint. I want you to appreciate that. Now, my friends, last but not least, another joint I want to tell you, and this joint, there are 2 joints which we find it in, of course, the middle ear, because in the middle ear we have 3 bones over there. And what are these bones? We know they are the mist bones. I've mentioned these things already. The first, the M, is of course the malleus. Yes, we talk about the incus, we talk about the stapes. Yes, I've done extensive videos regarding some of these things. Yes, if you look at, for instance, the malleus, you may have the head, you may have the neck. You may have some kind of other processes by way of the anterior process and all that. You may also have what you call the mandible, okay, also around. Yes, if you look at that of the incus, just a rapid one, you may see that it will have a body. Yes, the incus will have a body. It will have an articular, surface for articulating with, of course, the head of the malleus. Yes, not only that, it will have. Now, from the body, anything which extends from, of course, this incus will be called a process. Or they are the leg-like processes that we talk about. Now, for instance, we will have the shorter leg over here, which we call it the short cruise. Okay, something you can also call the short process. Anything which comes from the body is a process. And then you can have the longer one, which we may have, we call it the long cruise, or something we call the long process. But remember that at the terminal aspect of this long cruise, we see, a lens-shaped structure over here, which we call the lenticular process of what we call the incus. Something that other anatomists believe that should be the 4th ear ossicle, okay? The lenticular, process. That's the one over here. And my friend, this lenticular process, what I want you to understand is that it bears a depression, a cup-shaped depression. Yes, that's one thing I want you to become aware of. Okay, so that another structure which we are calling it the head, and this time the head of who? The head of the 3rd bone, okay, which is the stapes. Okay, so the stapes will have a head which will be articulated with the depression in the, of course, the lenticular process, with the terminal portion of what we call the long process, or the long cruise of what we call the incus. Yes, some other things you may have something you call the anterior cruise. Yes, coming from what we call the, from the incus actually. from the stapes, and of course we have the posterior leg-like processes, one posterior, one anterior, and also present with the foot process. We are not going into these things, okay? I've done videos on these ones, but precisely what I want to show you over here, as far as the ear bones are concerned, is that there are two joints over here. And what are these two joints? Now, this is the malleus, and of course, this is the incus. So what do you think will be the name of the joint which will be formed over here? It will be called incudo-malleolar joint. So the joint which will be formed over here between the incus and the malleus is incudo-malleolar joint. Now, one thing is that what I want you to understand is that the incudo-malleolar joint is not a ball and socket joint. Remember that this video is about telling you the oversights as far as the ball and socket joints, yes, are concerned. Okay, so one thing I want you to understand is that this incudo-malleolar joint is not a ball and socket joint. But my friends, importantly, what I want you to know is that it is a saddle joint. It is a saddle type of joint, which is also, of course, synovial in nature. It's a saddle type of joint. I want you to understand that. But this is the guy I am interested in. Now, there's also a joint between, of course, this lenticular process, okay, the cup-shaped depression over here, and of course, lenticular process of incus, and then, of course, the head of the stapes. Okay, so there's also a joint over here in, of course, the middle ear. And what do you think will be the name of this joint? We combine the names, so the name is going to be incudo-stapedial joint, and that's the one I've written over here, incudo-stapedial joint. And my friend, this incudo-stapedial joint, my friends, is a ball and socket joint. Why? Because I said that this lenticular process will present with a cup-shaped depression, and of course the head of the stapes, yes, will be rounded, and of course it will come and fit in over here, permitting all those, diatrodial movement which are permitted by what we call the, ball and socket, joint. Yeah, so these are the things which I want you to be really, understand. My friends, I'm very grateful for your time this evening. I believe you found this power behind the voice helpful, so that this time around you know which, further examples you are supposed to give as far as the discussion of ball and socket joints, yes, are concerned. Okay, we talked about, of course, the glenohumeral joint. We talked about acetobulofemoral joint. We talked about the talocalcaneo-navicular joint. And my friends, we talked about something we call incudo-stapedial joint. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.